Did you know that the idea of true love, the kind where knights brave dragons for a lady's smile, was pretty much invented in the Middle Ages? What if we told you that the love stories you grew up with, from fairy tales to romantic comedies, owe a huge debt to a strange and powerful concept from the 12th to 15th centuries, called courtly love? Get ready to uncover the surprising ways this ancient idea still echoes in our hearts and stories today. Number 1. The unattainable nature of love. One of the most defining and perhaps heartbreaking aspects of courtly love was its often unattainable nature. This was not the kind of love where everyone rode off into the sunset for a happily ever after. In fact, quite the opposite. The very essence of courtly love, in many of the most famous medieval romances, rested on a foundation of longing, frustration, and often tragic unfulfillment. It was a love that was rarely, if ever, fully possessed or publicly celebrated. This inherent unattainability was not seen as a flaw, but as a central part of its power and its ability to ennoble the lover. Consider the ultimate fate of characters like Lancelot and Guinevere. Their love, though passionate and deeply influential on their lives, was ultimately doomed. Lancelot was King Arthur's most trusted knight, and Guinevere was Arthur's queen. Their devotion to each other was intense, but it was also a betrayal of their loyalty to the king and the very ideals of the Round Table. Their love existed in the shadows, fueled by stolen moments and secret communication. When it was finally exposed, it led to the downfall of Arthur's kingdom, the fracturing of the Knights of the Round Table, and ultimately the tragic separation of the lovers. Lancelot retired to a hermitage, and Guinevere became a nun. Their love was powerful enough to destroy a kingdom, yet it never found a peaceful, lasting earthly union. The enduring power of their story lies in this profound sense of loss and the unattainable nature of their desire. Their love, in its full expression, could not exist within the societal structures of their time. Similarly, the legendary love of Tristan and Isolde is a classic example of this tragic unattainability. Bound by a love potion, their passion was irresistible and undeniable, but Isolde was King Mark's wife. Their relationship was marked by constant escapes, disguises, and desperate attempts to be together, while avoiding discovery. Even when they were physically together, their happiness was always fleeting, overshadowed by the threat of exposure, the sorrow of separation, and the pain of their divided loyalties. The very magic that bound them also sealed their fate, forcing them into a life of clandestine meetings and eventual agonizing separation. Their story culminates in death, with Tristan dying of a poisoned wound, longing for Isolde, and Isolde dying of grief upon reaching him too late. Their love, so absolute and profound, could only find its resolution in death, highlighting the core idea that such intense, illicit love could not find a stable place in the world. This emphasis on the unfulfilled or tragic outcome served several purposes in medieval romance. It allowed the authors to explore the depths of human emotion, the pain of longing, and the spiritual yearning that often accompanied courtly devotion. Because the physical consummation was often impossible or fraught with danger, the love was often spiritualized. The lover's focus shifted from mere physical desire to a deeper appreciation of the lady's virtue, beauty, and the moral inspiration she provided. The very act of longing became a noble pursuit, a form of spiritual exercise. Constant striving without the satisfaction of full attainment kept the lover in a perpetual state of refined desire and devotion. The idea that the longing was more important than the possession is key. It was the pursuit, the effort, the suffering for love that ennobled the knight and fueled his heroic deeds. If the love was easily attained and happily settled, much of the dramatic tension and the opportunity for the knight to prove his worth would disappear. The distance, whether physical or social, between the lover and the beloved perpetuated the idealization and the constant striving. The lady remained on her pedestal, a beacon of unreachable perfection, inspiring endless devotion and feats of chivalry. This concept stood in stark contrast to the practical realities of medieval marriage, which was largely a social and economic arrangement focused on alliances, property, and heirs. Courtly love, with its emphasis on emotion, personal devotion, and often illicit passion, presented an alternative, idealized vision of love that was divorced from these practical considerations. Because it was so often outside the rules, it could explore an intensity of feeling that would have been impossible within the confines of conventional marriage. The sorrow, the melancholic beauty of unfulfilled longing, the idea that a love could be so pure and intense that it could not exist in the world, became a powerful and enduring theme. It set a precedent for many tragic romances that followed, shaping our understanding of love as something vast, sometimes dangerous, and not always leading to a comfortable ending. Number 2. Elevating the status of women in literature. While medieval society remained undeniably patriarchal, with women often having limited rights and agency in real life, courtly love literature presented a fascinating, almost paradoxical. The lady became the central figure, the ultimate arbiter of a knight's worth, and the very source of his inspiration and renown. This literary elevation, though not always mirroring societal reality, introduced new ways of imagining women's power and influence. In these romances, the lady is not merely an object to be won or a passive recipient of a knight's affections. She is often the motivator of his actions, the judge of his chivalry, and the one whose favor can bestow honor or disgrace. A knight's identity and reputation became deeply intertwined with his devotion to his chosen lady. Her mercy, or grace, was something a knight constantly sought, and her approval was a greater prize than any material wealth or even victory in battle. This placed immense narrative power in the hands of the female characters. Knights performed arduous quests, faced fearsome foes, and endured great suffering, all with the explicit aim of winning a glance, a token, or a kind word from their beloved lady. Courts, particularly those of powerful and cultured women like Eleanor of Aquitaine and her daughter Marie de Champagne, in the 12th century played a crucial role in fostering this literary environment. These women were not just patrons of the arts, they were often seen as the very models of the courtly lady. Intelligent, refined, and capable of inspiring great works, the poets and troubadours who frequented these courts dedicated their songs and stories to these noblewomen, further cementing their image as figures of immense cultural and emotional influence. The Lays of Marie de France, for instance, often feature clever and active heroines who navigate complex emotional landscapes and sometimes even instigate the action. Her character, Chèvrefoil, in The Lie of the Same Name, manages to communicate with Tristan and engineer a brief, poignant reunion, demonstrating agency and intelligence. The very focus of the narrative often shifted to revolve around women's desires, their judgments, and their beauty. Descriptions of the lady's physical appearance became highly detailed and idealized, not just for aesthetic pleasure, but as a reflection of her inner virtue and nobility. Her beauty was seen as a manifestation of her perfect soul, and gazing upon her was described as a soul-stirring experience for the knight. This idealization, while perhaps still objectifying her in some sense, transformed her into a symbol of moral and spiritual perfection, a guiding star for the knight's chivalric path. Moreover, courtly love provided a platform for women to exercise a form of cultural and emotional authority. In some courtly settings, courts of love were even imagined, where real noblewomen would preside over debates and decide on matters of romantic etiquette and disputes, though the historical reality of these is debated. Regardless, the concept underscored the idea that women were capable of sophisticated emotional understanding and discerning judgment in matters of the heart. They were not merely passive recipients of affection, but active participants in the complex dance of courtly relationships. However, it is important to acknowledge the paradox inherent in this elevation. While women were idealized in literature, their real-world societal roles often remained constrained. The courtly lady, though powerful in the literary imagination, was still often defined by her beauty, her virtue, as defined by men, and her ability to inspire men. Her power was often derived from her status as an object of desire and inspiration, rather than from independent political or economic authority. Yet within the confines of the romance genre, this shift was significant. It granted women a narrative centrality and emotional depth that was revolutionary for its time. It presented a vision of womanhood that was more complex, more influential, and more celebrated for its intrinsic qualities, paving the way for later literary traditions that continued to explore the multifaceted roles of women in love. This literary emphasis shaped how future generations would perceive and depict the central role of women in romantic narratives. Number 3. Internal conflict of the lover. Courtly love, far from being a simple, straightforward pursuit of affection, plunged the knight into a profound and often agonizing internal conflict. This wasn't just about winning a lady's heart. It was about navigating a treacherous labyrinth of conflicting loyalties, moral dilemmas, and psychological torment. The lover, typically a knight, found himself caught between his sworn duty to his lord or king, his adherence to the chivalric code, and the overwhelming, irresistible dictates of his heart for the lady. This struggle became a powerful and recurring theme in medieval romances, adding layers of complexity and tragedy to the narratives. The most iconic example of this internal battle is found in the figure of Lancelot. As King Arthur's greatest knight, Lancelot was bound by an unbreakable oath of loyalty to his sovereign. He was the paragon of chivalry, dedicated to justice, honor, and the well-being of the kingdom. Yet his all-consuming love for Queen Guinevere, Arthur's wife, placed him in an impossible predicament. Every secret meeting, every stolen kiss, every longing glance was a direct betrayal of his king and his knightly vows. Lancelot's internal struggle is often depicted as intense and soul-crushing. He is torn between his devotion to Guinevere, which brings him immense joy and inspiration, and his deep respect and loyalty to Arthur, which he knows he is violating. This conflict ultimately leads to the downfall of Camelot, as Lancelot's divided heart weakens the very foundations of the Round Table. His inability to reconcile these two supreme loyalties transforms him from the ideal knight into a tragic figure consumed by his own passions and the consequences of his choices. Similarly, Tristan's story is riddled with internal conflict. He is deeply loyal to his uncle, King Mark, and his reputation as a brave and honorable knight is initially built on his service to the king. However, after the fateful love potion, his love for Iseult, King Mark's wife, Tristan finds himself perpetually living a lie, forced to deceive the man he is sworn to serve. His heart is pulled between his affection for Mark and his irresistible passion for Iseult. This constant deception and the fear of discovery inflict immense psychological torment upon him. He experiences moments of profound guilt, despair, and a sense of being trapped by a love he cannot escape, yet which he knows is morally wrong within the context of his society and his duties. Conflict is less about choice and more about being helplessly driven by an overpowering force, highlighting the destructive potential of an illicit love. This inherent tension between a knight's public duty and his private passion was a core element of courtly love narratives. It explored the idea of phinemas, or pure love, which was often depicted as a noble, spiritual force, even if its earthly manifestation was illicit. Paradox lay in the idea that such a refined and ennobling love could simultaneously be a source of sin and betrayal according to religious and societal norms. Lovers grappled with the moral implications of their actions, often experiencing profound spiritual agony. Was this intense love a gift from God or a temptation from the devil? This ambiguity added depth to the characters, making them more relatable in their human struggles. The psychological torment of the lover often manifested as deep melancholy, lovesickness, and a sense of isolation. They carried the burden of their secret, their divided loyalties, and the constant threat of exposure. This internal struggle prevented them from finding true peace or happiness even in moments of stolen bliss. The love was an internal fire that purified and ennobled, but also consumed and destroyed. It was a crucible in which the knight's character was tested, often revealing both his greatest strengths and his most tragic flaws. This enduring exploration of internal conflict in courtly love shaped how future stories would depict characters grappling with complex moral choices and the profound consequences of their passions. Number 4. The role of the go-between. In the clandestine world of courtly love, where illicit passions often blossomed under the very noses of unsuspecting husbands and watchful courts, a crucial figure emerged: the go-between. These individuals, whether loyal servants, discreet ladies-in-waiting, trusted squires, or even compassionate confessors, played an absolutely vital role in facilitating the secret affair. Their loyalty, cunning, and absolute discretion were paramount, for their discovery could mean ruin or even death for the lovers and often for themselves. They became the conduits through which yearning messages, secret tokens, and desperate plans were conveyed, making the impossible connection between forbidden lovers a reality. The most famous example of a go-between, almost synonymous with the role itself, is Brangæna in the story of Tristan and Isolde. Brangæna is Isolde's loyal lady-in-waiting, and her unwavering devotion to her mistress is central to the illicit romance. It is Brangæna who, by a fateful mistake, pours the love potion for Tristan and Isolde on their journey to King Mark, thus sealing their tragic destiny. From that moment forward, she dedicates herself to protecting their secret. She often stands in for Isolde at night in King Mark's bed, deceiving him to protect the queen's reputation in life. She risks her own life and honor repeatedly, enduring threats and even attempts on her life, all to maintain the illusion of Isolde's innocence and to allow the lovers to meet. Without Brangæna's unwavering loyalty and clever deceptions, the affair of Tristan and Isolde would have been exposed almost immediately, leading to a swift and brutal end. She is the silent, often suffering architect of their clandestine encounters. In the Arthurian romances, various maids and squires similarly serve Lancelot and Guinevere. Though not as prominent as Brangæna, these unnamed or briefly mentioned figures are essential to the mechanics of their secret relationship. They deliver secret letters, arrange discreet meetings, and act as lookouts, often bearing the weight of dangerous knowledge. Their very existence in the narrative because the constant need for secrecy and the elaborate network of trust required to sustain such a high-stakes affair. Sometimes, even the queen's chamberlain or a trusted nun might act as an intermediary, bridging the gap between the lovers and ensuring their dangerous communications remain hidden. The dangers faced by the go-between were immense. If discovered, they faced severe punishment, torture, or even execution for their complicity in betraying the lord or king. Their lives were perpetually at risk, and their quiet heroism often went uncelebrated, their loyalty rewarded only by the success of the secret affair. Their role highlighted the constant threat of discovery that hung over courtly lovers, making every whispered word and every exchanged glance a perilous undertaking. It also emphasized the extreme measures and levels of trust required to maintain such forbidden relationships within the rigid social structures of the medieval court. Beyond simply conveying messages, the go-between often served as a confidant, a shoulder to cry on and a source of counsel for the distressed lovers. They heard the laments of the lovesick knight, the despair of the trapped lady, and offered whatever comfort or practical advice they could. They understood the true depth of the lover's passion and shared the burden of their secret. Their presence in the narrative allowed authors to explore the emotional toll of clandestine love, not just on the main characters, but also on those drawn into their orbit. The go-between became a symbol of unwavering loyalty, a silent witness to a love that defied societal norms and an indispensable cog in the intricate machinery of medieval romantic intrigue. Without their silent efforts, many of the most celebrated courtly love stories simply could not have unfolded. Number 5. The quest narrative. quest, a journey undertaken by a hero to achieve a specific goal, became inextricably linked with the concept of courtly love, transforming from a purely chivalric test into a powerful expression of romantic devotion. In medieval romances, knights often embarked on arduous, perilous quests, not just for honor or glory, but directly in pursuit of their lady's favor, to prove their worthiness, or sometimes to rescue her from danger. The quest became a physical manifestation of the lover's internal struggle and his unwavering commitment, with each obstacle overcome, symbolizing the challenges faced on the path of love. While the quest for the Holy Grail is perhaps the most famous example in Arthurian legend, it was often intertwined with or influenced by courtly love's spiritual aspects. Knights like Percival or Galahad, though seeking a divine object, are often seen as embodying a kind of pure, almost spiritual love that echoes the idealization seen in courtly love. Their purity of heart and unwavering devotion to a higher purpose, akin to a knight's devotion to his lady, allows them to succeed where others fail. More directly, however, many knights undertook specific quests, often seemingly arbitrary at the request of their lady. A lady might demand a knight retrieve a particular object, defeat a specific villain, or even just wear her colors in a tournament as a symbol of his devotion, the deeper meaning being to prove his absolute obedience and prowess solely for her. Chrétien de Troyes' Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart, often referred to as Lancelot, or the Knight of the Cart, provides a prime example of the quest driven by love. When Queen Guinevere is abducted, Lancelot, consumed by his love for her, embarks on a desperate quest to rescue her. His journey is filled with humiliating challenges and seemingly impossible obstacles. He must ride in a cart reserved for criminals, cross a sword bridge that cuts his flesh, and overcome numerous knights, all for the sake of his queen. Every suffering he endures, every pain he withstands is a testament to his overwhelming love and devotion to Guinevere. His willingness to sacrifice his honor by riding in the cart, for her sake, cursed the idea that love, especially courtly love, could transcend even the rigid societal expectations of chivalry. Quest becomes a physical ordeal that purifies and proves the depth of his passion. The obstacles encountered during the quest were not merely plot devices. They were symbolic. Perilous forests represented the confusing moral wilderness of illicit love. The monstrous beasts or wicked knights represented the societal disapproval, the rivals, or the internal doubts that plagued the lover. Each triumph over an adversary was a victory of love. Over adversity, a demonstration of the knight's unwavering spirit, fueled by his lady's image. The journey itself became a gaudy experience. The knight, though already skilled, would return from his quest not only with the trophy or the rescued lady, but also with increased wisdom, stronger resolve, and a heightened reputation. All of which directly contributed to his standing in the eyes of his beloved in the court. Quest narrative also served as a metaphor for the lover's internal struggles. The physical journey mirrored the psychological journey of self-discovery and the overcoming of personal flaws. The knight's perseverance through physical pain and emotional distress on the quest reflected the endurance required to maintain a secret, often forbidden. The return to the court, often with the lady or a token of her favor, solidified his transformed status. It was a public declaration of his private devotion, a testament to the power of love to inspire extraordinary feats. This blending of adventure, chivalry, and intense romantic motivation meant that for centuries the hero's journey in literature was not just about seeking glory, but about proving the absolute, all-consuming power of love. Number 6. Refinement of manners. Courtly love was not just about secret passions and heroic deeds. It was also a profound school for the refinement of manners and social conduct within the aristocratic circles of the Middle Ages. It fostered an intricate code of etiquette, transforming rough warriors into elegant gentlemen and graceful ladies. The pursuit of a lady's favor, or Phanomers inspired a knight to cultivate virtues, such as courtesy, eloquence, modesty, and generosity. This emphasis on refined behavior transformed the medieval court into a stage for sophisticated interactions where appearance and demeanor were as important as martial prowess. The influential text De Amore, on love, written by Andreas Capellanus in the 12th century, though debated in its intent, whether serious treatise or satirical commentary, offers a glimpse into these imagined rules of courtly love. Man nains Nitzivis imagined rules of courtly love. It outlines principles such as love is always a new inhabitant of the house of youth, and a true lover constantly thinks about his beloved. More importantly, it discusses how love demands certain behaviors: humility, discretion, constant service, and a complete absence of avarice. While Andreas' work might be a stylized ideal, it reflects a broader cultural trend. A knight inspired by courtly love was expected to speak gently, dress elegantly, and move with grace. His speech would be filled with compliments and poetic language reflecting the high regard in which he held his lady. He would be generous to others, kind to his fellow knights, and always deferential to his lady's wishes. This push for refinement contrasted sharply with the often brutal realities of feudal life and the more boorish behaviors associated with warfare. Courtly love provided a context in which warriors could practice a different kind of strength: the strength of self-control, emotional intelligence, and social finesse. The court itself became a microcosm of refined living. Here, poetry, music, and song flourished as central means of expressing courtly sentiments. Troubadours and caterans composed intricate lyrics celebrating their ladies, articulating the joys and sorrows of love, and outlining the proper conduct of a lover. These performances were not merely entertainment, they were lessons in courtly behavior, teaching the assembled nobles how to express their emotions in a sophisticated and artful manner. The lady, as the object of devotion, became a civilizing force. Her presence and the desire for her approval encouraged knights to temper their aggression, to practice patience, and to develop their intellectual and artistic sensibilities. A knight who behaved crudely or spoke uncouthly would never win the favor of a truly courtly lady. Therefore, striving for her affection meant striving for personal improvement in all social graces. This pursuit of refinement was not superficial. It was believed that true love inspired moral and ethical excellence, transforming the lover into a more virtuous individual. Courtly rituals and games also emerged, such as the exchange of tokens, the wearing of a lady's colors in a tournament, or the formal declaration of devotion. These public displays, governed by strict rules of etiquette, solidified the social aspect of courtly love. They created a shared understanding of appropriate conduct and expectations. Within the courtly environment, the idea that love could elevate not just the individual, but the entire court, transforming it into a center of culture, elegance, and refined interaction, was a powerful legacy of this era. This emphasis on manners, grace, and sophisticated interaction continues to influence our understanding of what it means to be chivalrous or courtly. Even today. Number 7. Suffering and melancholy. In the complex tapestry of courtly love, suffering was not merely an unfortunate byproduct, but a central, almost celebrated component. Courtly lover was expected to endure profound emotional pain, sleepless nights, loss of appetite, and a perpetual state of longing and melancholy. Far from being seen as a weakness, this lovesickness was often interpreted as the surest sign of a truly deep and noble devotion. A testament to the overwhelming power of the beloved, this portrayal of lovesick suffering permeated medieval romances, giving rise to vivid descriptions of the lover's tormented state. The literary tradition of portraying the lovesick knight is rich and detailed. He is depicted as pale, thin, constantly sighing, unable to focus on anything but his lady. His eyes might be described as glazed over, his voice weak from yearning. This physical manifestation of emotional distress was so common that it was almost a recognized medical condition in the Middle Ages, with scholars and physicians discussing its symptoms and potential cures. Though these were often more poetic than practical, the lover's pain was seen as a purifying fire, refining his soul and proving the sincerity of his love. The more intense the suffering, the more profound the devotion was understood to be. Lancelot, in the Arthurian romances, frequently falls into states of lovesickness and despair due to his separation from Guinevere, or if he believes he has lost her favor. There are moments when his grief is so overwhelming that he loses his mind, forgets his identity, and wanders in the wilderness like a wild man. This temporary madness, brought on by his love for the queen, is a dramatic representation of the extremes of suffering expected of a true courtly lover. His physical and mental anguish echoes the depth of his passion and his helplessness in the face of overwhelming emotions. Even when not driven to madness, Lancelot often experiences profound melancholy, unable to enjoy feasts or tournaments unless Guinevere is present, or he is performing a feat specifically for her. The suffering was not only about the pain of separation or unrequited love, it was also about the inherent impossibility of the situation. Given that many courtly loves were illicit or unattainable, the lover was trapped in a perpetual state of longing, knowing that full union was either forbidden or simply out of reach. This created an internal torture, a constant ache in the heart that could never be fully relieved. The unfulfilled desire, rather than fading, often intensified with each moment of separation, or each reminder of the beloved's distance. This emphasis on suffering also served to ennoble the lover. By willingly enduring such pain for the sake of his lady, the knight demonstrated his exceptional virtue and constancy. It was a form of self-sacrifice, proving that his love was not fleeting or superficial, but deep and enduring. The melancholy of the courtly lover resonated with broader medieval religious themes of earthly suffering leading to spiritual purification. Just as a saint might suffer for their faith, a lover suffered for their lady, elevating the earthly desire to something akin to a spiritual quest. This portrayal of suffering as a noble and integral part of love profoundly shaped the literary tradition of romantic melancholy, influencing countless poets and writers for centuries to come, solidifying the ideas that true love often comes with a heavy price. Number 8. Secrecy and adultery. One of the most thrilling and complex aspects of courtly love, and perhaps its most scandalous from a modern perspective, was its frequent association with secrecy and often adultery. Unlike modern romantic ideals that typically champion open consensual relationships, many of the most famous courtly love narratives revolved around illicit affairs conducted in absolute secrecy. This clandestine nature was not just a plot device. It was a fundamental component that intensified the passion, heightened the stakes, and provided much of the dramatic tension in medieval romances. Classic examples of Lancelot and Guinevere and Tristan and Isolde are the pillars of this theme. In both cases, the love is forbidden because the lady is already married to the king, the lord to whom the knight owes his primary allegiance. This inherent conflict creates an immediate need for absolute secrecy. Their very lives and the stability of the court depend on their affair remaining hidden. Every meeting is a risk, every whispered word a potential betrayal. The thrill of their stolen moments is amplified by the constant threat of discovery, adding a powerful layer of danger and excitement to the narrative. The necessity for secrecy led to elaborate plots and complex deceptions. Lovers would meet in hidden gardens, secluded chambers, or during the dead of night, using coded messages, trusted intermediaries, and ingenious disguises to conceal their trysts. This created a highly intricate web of intrigue involving not just the lovers themselves, but also their loyal confidants, who often risked their own lives and reputations to protect the secret. The narrative tension often builds around near discoveries, false accusations, and the lover's desperate attempts to maintain their illusion of innocence. This element of adultery was not just for shock value. It forced the exploration of profound moral ambiguities. On one hand, the love was portrayed as noble, pure, finamorous, and ennobling to the knight, inspiring him to unparalleled acts of chivalry and virtue. On the other hand, it was a blatant violation of religious law, societal norms, and feudal loyalty. This tension between the purity of the love and the sinfulness of the act created a powerful internal conflict for the characters and a compelling dilemma for the audience. Was this love truly good, even if it defied sacred vows? Was the loyalty to the heart more powerful than the loyalty to one's king or god? The romances often did not offer easy answers, instead leaving these questions hanging, adding to the enduring mystery and allure of the stories. The illicit nature of the love also contributed to its unattainable quality, because it could not be openly acknowledged or celebrated. It often led to tragedy and separation. The love was a consuming fire, but one that often burned itself out or led to destruction, precisely because it could not exist openly within the bounds of society. The secrecy heightened the emotional intensity, making each stolen moment precious and each separation agonizing. It also emphasized the idea that true love in its purest form often transcended societal conventions and personal duties, existing in a realm beyond the mundane. This exploration of forbidden passion and its inherent secrecy set a precedent for countless romantic tales that followed, cementing the idea that some loves are so powerful they must hide in the shadows. Number 9. Heroic feats for love. Knights in medieval romances were already known for their bravery and skill in battle, but courtly love introduced a powerful new motivator for their heroic feats: the desire to win a lady's favor, to prove their worth to her, or to protect her honor. This transformed chivalric prowess from a general pursuit of glory into a direct personal devotion, making the lady the ultimate inspiration for astounding acts of courage, strength, and unwavering determination. Tournaments, quests, and battles against monstrous foes or rival knights were no longer just tests of skill. They became grand gestures of love. Consider the tales of Lancelot. While he is King Arthur's greatest knight, his most extraordinary feats of strength and courage are almost always performed with Guinevere in mind. He fights with unparalleled ferocity in tournaments, not just to win the prize, but to earn a glance of approval or a token from the queen. When he performs impossible tasks, such as clearing a path through a forest of thorns or fighting multiple knights at once, his thoughts are often consumed by Guinevere. His love for her makes him invincible, granting him superhuman strength and resolve. His famous fits of madness, induced by despair over their separation, are often broken only by the sight or thought of Guinevere, upon which he regains his senses and his incredible fighting ability. The very act of performing these deeds for her ennobles him and solidifies his reputation as the quintessential courtly lover. Tristan too performs heroic deeds directly motivated by Iseult. Before they are bound by the love potion, Tristan fights the monstrous Morholt, a champion of Ireland, to free Cornwall from tribute. He does this for King Mark, but his later encounters with Iseult, as she heals him, are deeply tied to this initial act of bravery. Later, his willingness to endure exile, disguise himself, and constantly evade King Mark's wrath speaks to a different kind of heroic feat, one of endurance and cunning, all for the sake of his forbidden love. He fights rivals for Iseult's hand and undergoes personal suffering to protect her, demonstrating that his prowess is dedicated entirely to her. The public spectacle of tournaments became a key stage for these displays of courtly love. Knights would wear a lady's favor, a scarf, a sleeve, a ribbon on their helm or shield, publicly declaring their devotion. Their performance in the jousting arena or the melee was a direct reflection of their love and a bid for their lady's approval. A victory was not just a personal triumph. An honor she could share, and a testament to her inspiring power. A knight's reputation was thus directly linked to his romantic devotion. The better he fought, the more he suffered. For his lady, the more esteemed he became, not just as a warrior, but as a lover. This link between martial prowess and romantic devotion elevated the very concept of chivalry. It suggested that true courage and honor were not merely inherent, but were cultivated and perfected through the inspiration of a noble lady. Love made the knight not just stronger, but more virtuous, more disciplined, and more willing to face any challenge. The idea was that love refined the knight, sharpening his skills and purifying his intent. The narrative device of heroic feats performed for love provided endless opportunities for adventure, excitement, and dramatic tension in medieval romances, ensuring that the reader was constantly reminded of the profound connection between a knight's external actions. This fusion of love and heroism continues to influence adventure stories and romantic narratives, even today. Number 10. Idealization of the lady. At the very core of courtly love, reshaping medieval romance from its foundations, was the radical idealization of the lady. She was not merely a woman, she was transformed into an almost divine figure, placed upon a pedestal, revered and worshipped by her knightly admirer. This was a profound shift from earlier, more practical views of women, who were often valued for their dowries, their ability to bear heirs, or their domestic skills. In courtly love, the lady became an abstract ideal, a source of moral inspiration, virtue, and transcendent beauty, often more symbolic than realistic. Courtly lady, unlike her real-world counterpart, was seldom described in terms of her domestic duties or her political acumen. Instead, her beauty was celebrated as a reflection of her inner goodness and nobility. Descriptions of her physical, tie-bin, golden hair, sparkling eyes, and graceful demeanor were meticulously detailed, not just for aesthetic appeal, but as after-manifestations of her perfect soul. Gazing upon her was portrayed as a spiritual experience, capable of elevating the lover's spirit and purifying his intentions. She was a beacon of light, a guiding star whose very presence could inspire a knight to strive for the highest ideals of chivalry. Consider Guinevere. In the Arthurian legends, while her actions often lead to tragic consequences, she is consistently portrayed as the epitome of beauty and grace, the queen whose mere glance can inspire Lancelot to impossible feats. She is the center of the court, the focus of adoration, and her judgment is paramount. Her status is not just that of a queen, but of an idealized lady, whose approval or disapproval has profound effects on the knight's spirit and reputation. Her beauty is a force, a symbol of the ideal that Lancelot strives for and suffers for. Similarly, Isolde in the story of Tristan and Isolde is depicted as breathtakingly beautiful. Her loveliness being one of the initial reasons Tristan is sent to fetch her for King Mark. Her beauty is so potent that it captivates not only Tristan but also the reader, justifying the extraordinary lengths to which Tristan goes for her. She is not just a character, she is the embodiment of a dangerous, intoxicating beauty that compels devotion and sacrifice. This concept of the lady as an ideal fostered the idea of service to the lady. The knight saw himself as a devoted servant, entirely dedicated to her wishes and honor, much like a vassal to his lord or a worshipper to a saint. This service was not about expecting a physical reward, but about the spiritual fulfillment gained from the devotion itself. The act of serving her, of striving to be worthy of her, was seen as a path to personal refinement and moral excellence. It was believed that true love for such an idealized being could only elevate the lover, making him more courageous, more courteous, and more virtuous. This idealization, while beautiful in literature, also presented a significant paradox. By placing women on such a high pedestal, courtly love often stripped them of their individual complexities and real-world agency. They became symbols rather than fully fleshed-out human beings, defined more by their inspiring effect on men than by their own desires or ambitions. However, within the confines of the romance genre, this idealization provided women with an unprecedented narrative centrality. It made their emotions, their beauty, and their judgments the driving force of the story. It challenged earlier literary traditions, where women were often secondary figures per how heroines would be depicted in literature for centuries to come, solidifying their role as the ultimate inspiration in the grand narratives of love and adventure.